everyone, welcome to Awkward Author. My name's Alyssa Grasso, and this is my weekly vlog and podcast about my sometimes awkward, always awesome author life. Definitely been a more productive author week for me this week than it has been previously, so I was able to actually get some writing done this week, which is, is good if you're trying to be an author, and it's not something I've been able to do too much of lately. So right now, my work in progress is the third book in my trilogy, my thriller trilogy that I'm going to be putting out some point in 2020. I haven't quite firmed up a publication date because I'm still writing the third book, and I just have really rough drafts of the first two books, so it's still quite a ways away from publication, but 2020, it's definitely going to be coming out, and I will definitely share with you more details as we get closer to that. But right now, I am making progress on the third book, and I'm at, I think, 18,000 words. That's 18, not 80. 18,000 words on the third book in the trilogy. So I feel like, I feel like I'm at a point where, okay, it's an actual, it's coming together. It's a book. I can see, how things are. It's got actual structure and stuff like that. It's not just, a few random chapters, which is, in the early stages, it's kind of like, oh my gosh, how am I going to turn this into a whole book? You get this kind of imposter syndrome sort of feeling when you sit down and you're just not sure if this is even going to work. But, I'm far enough along now where I can see, okay, this is all, it's getting fleshed out. It's becoming a real live actual book. And this is even with, I do outlining and stuff like that, but it's still a little shaky every time you just start a book, and maybe that's because I have so many books over the course of my entire life that I've started, and they are just maybe 1,000 or 2,000 words, maybe like 5,000 words that are just the beginning of a book that never got written, and I certainly have a lot of those in my files, that I've accumulated over the course of my life. And so, yeah, it's always a little tenuous, I guess, when you start a book where you're not sure if this one's going to be a real book now, because I, am putting together a trilogy. I couldn't really abandon this one, or if I did, I'd have to kind of go back to the drawing board with it. I couldn't just give up on it entirely. So there's a little bit of pressure there. But sometimes a little bit of pressure is good to keep you on track, right? Now, as far as, my process on these, I guess, the next steps, well, first I will be finishing the third book in the trilogy. I'm still, keeping my goal, which I kind of tentatively set for myself, as having this done by the middle of October-ish. Notice I put that ish in there. That's to give you a little bit of wiggle room, because that's like a month away. Less than a month away if you're being really technical. I'm at 18,000 words, so that's good, but I got a long ways to go to get to, the end of the book. Like I said, probably this will clock in around 75,000 words, possibly less, but roughly in that ballpark. So 18,000 is a good start, but I do have a long way to go, and I do other things besides writing, so, making sure I get the time in to write, it can be a little bit tricky, so we'll see how it goes, but that's what I'm shooting for, middle of October, to be done with a rough draft. Now, at that point, I'm going to have, 3 rough drafts, and they are, I have not done anything with the other 2 books yet, as far as, just going back and doing, a read-through of it, and, just, the really... I don't know how you are when you write, but when I write, it's typing as fast as I can, and often, my fingers go faster than my brain sometimes, I feel, so my fingers are not that smart. And even though I know the difference between, there, and there, or, other homonyms, I think, are the name for those words, that doesn't mean that when I'm typing, I don't put the wrong word in there. And sometimes it'll be a word that's not even a homonym, but, kind of close. It starts with the same letter or has sort of the same sound, even though it means nothing at all the same thing. So, I find mistakes like that all the time when I go through a first draft that I've written. And, and then there's just other things like words missing from paragraphs, or, I get a character's name wrong, or something. So just really basic things like that I will go through and fix on a first reading. Then, after that, I really want to, or maybe before that, I don't know, we'll see, but I want to, kind of go back through and do a little bit more of a thorough edit, because this is a trilogy. There are certain things that, need to match up from book to book, and plot points that are going to carry over through the different books. So, it's going to be, it's a little bit more of a challenge, because I've always written standalone books before, and so, I want to maybe a little bit more thoroughly go through things and make sure, the overall story makes sense, because already, like I said, I've been changing some things, so there's definitely some things I need to go back and change, and, other things like that. And so after I do all that, after I first read through, after I make those changes, then I'll probably go through. I know you're already like, how many times does she read her books? I read them a lot, because then I'll probably go through and do a little bit more of a thorough edit, and, maybe not things that are technically wrong, but, maybe word choice or language that I might want to clean up, get rid of anything maybe that doesn't need to be there, that's just kind of, when you're writing, sometimes you put stuff in and then it's like, well, this doesn't have any bearing on the story, this can go out, that kind of thing. So I'll probably do that reading next. And then at that point, when I feel pretty comfortable that I've done everything that I can do to it, at that point, I will probably, have to send this off to an editor. Now, I haven't set up anything for it, because honestly, I don't know when I'm going to be ready, with these things. So, that is something I have to do. I've worked with some different editors in the past, so I don't know if I would use the same editors that I've used before. I mean, one was for a very different project that I worked with. Two were for very different projects that I worked with, and then another one did work on some thrillers. I was happy with her work, but she didn't do a lot in terms of editing. Now, of course, I do a lot of editing ahead of time, so, there may not be such major things that need to get done, but still, I'm thinking more about this, and that is something that I'll have to, figure out, but like I said, I'm a long ways from that. And then at that point, after I get that feedback back from an editor and make some changes, at that point, I will probably send things out to, I have a list of advanced readers, beta readers. These are people who, have expressed an interest in being a part of my advanced team, and, reading early copies. So I do have a list of people, so I will be sending out to them at that point, usually, after it's gone through, a few rounds of edits, I guess. So, at that point, it's probably just minor tweaks, hopefully. Hopefully there aren't any major things when it goes out to that list, and just, anything that needs some touching up or fixing. And then at that point, I can start to really plan for publication and get everything set up for that. So yeah, there's a lot that goes into putting a book out there. Now, you don't have to necessarily do things my way, and most people don't, but that's kind of the strategy that I use as far as publication goes. And I know everybody has, different methods and different processes, I guess, that they use. But one thing I'm going to advise anyone who is putting out a book, is to, at some point, in the publication process and before you've actually published your book, is to pay for, a professional either editor or, proofreader to, go through your manuscript. Now, there's a little difference between what editors and proofreaders do. An editor will do proofreading work, but they'll also do, more than that, get more into, looking at the language, looking at the story, anything like plot points that don't make sense, or, that are you have something that when you describe in one chapter, a character has, blonde hair, and then, 3 chapters later they have black hair, and no hair dye is involved. Things like that, are things that an editor will pick up on and point out too. Whereas a proofreader is more focused on, just the language, not even so much the language, the grammar, the spelling, punctuation, very, very much the mechanics of how you write. And there are paid services you can use, and they're a little bit hit or miss, but that is one strategy as far as proofreading. But I don't know that that's enough. I think that's something where we still haven't really replaced people, with robots or artificial intelligence or whatever. I think you're still going to get better service when you do engage the services of, a proofreader, or, if you want to go even a little bit more a step further, I would say an editor. And I do advise anyone that's publishing to, if you're going to spend money on anything in publishing, I think that is the most important thing to spend money on. And everybody has a different opinion on this, of course, but I mean, you probably should spend money on cover design, or, teach yourself how to create a really good cover, but that's a big learning process, and you're probably gonna have to pay for software and stuff like that unless you are already doing graphic design type work. But I would say, while you can design your own cover, I think, while you can do your own marketing, while there's a lot of things you can do yourself, I don't think that anyone is able to really effectively edit themselves. I mean, we can do some self-editing, and I do some self-editing, and I think all authors do some self-editing themselves, but I don't want to say we're blind to our own faults, but we do have a certain amount of blindness when it comes to the things we write. First of all, we know what we mean when we write something, but that doesn't mean that meaning, is clear to others reading our works. And so that's somewhere where, when you have someone, a third party, looking at it, they can, point these things out, like places where we're not being clear, or where things don't make sense, and we're like, well, how do you not understand that? And it's like, oh, okay, I guess maybe I wasn't very clear there or something. So, just things like that. And also, we just have this tendency to, because we know what we mean, because we know what we've written, we can't help it. We kind of gloss over the mistakes. So we, mentally correct them before we actually correct them, in the manuscript. And that's something you see all the time. And this point was driven home this week. I was looking at a book. I happened to be on Amazon, and somebody recommended some books, so I looked it up. And you know how Amazon works. Authors pay for ads. So on this page, there were some books advertised, and one of the books caught my attention. I'm not going to call it out by name, but it caught my attention because, well, it used a stock KDP cover, which, if you, KDP or CreateSpace, well, I guess it's KDP now, but if you've uploaded a book to Amazon, then you know that you have the choice of using, like, Amazon has different stock covers you can use, and just insert your title into it. You could even tweak these and make some modifications to them. And if you're just putting out like something like a freebie pamphlet or something like that, that's probably fine. But if you're actually publishing a book, I would advise you to stay away from the stock covers that are offered by Amazon, basically because your book's not going to stand out, because thousands upon thousands of people have used these covers, so they're going to be like very familiar looking, and it might confuse readers. And so I was like, well, why would somebody use like this stock cover? And it looked like it was for a novel, which it was one of the stock covers that's more geared towards, I think, a nonfiction book. Well, that's what it looks like to me when I look at it. Very basic cover. And also, the other reason I was drawn to it was not only did it use that stock cover, the title of this book was kind of confusing. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to call it out by name, but it was just a one-word title, but it was like, why would they choose that word? It was just a weird little thing. So I had to like click on it also because there was like, low stars. I'm like, what the heck is this? Like, is this really a novel? What is it? And so, I read the description, and then I read the reviews, and there was a couple of like glowing 5-star reviews, which I assume were, either fake accounts or, friends that they had write reviews, because the rest of the reviews were all like, pointing out that the book was like not edited at all. There were so many mistakes. This book was awful. I couldn't get through it with all the mistakes. I had to stop reading it because there's so many mistakes. And somebody's like, more than one person was like, just take a look at the look inside and you'll see, how many mistakes there are. So I was like, well, okay, I have to do this. So I did look at the look inside, and it was like, I mean, you couldn't get through a sentence without there being, some sort of error in it. So it was pretty bad. That's one of the worst things I've ever seen. But, as far as like a book that got published, I mean, I've seen some bad stuff, but this was, it was pretty atrocious. And, I don't know if somebody was even like, doing some kind of joke or something, or experiment, like how bad of a book can I put out there and still sell it, because it had the weird title, it had the stock cover, and it was just so badly written. I don't want to say badly written, but badly edited, not edited, is what I would say. So I don't know, it could have just been somebody was pulling some kind of experiment. They were actually paying to advertise it though, so that was interesting. But anyway, obviously, if you want to hurt your sales and, drive readers away, put a book out there that isn't, edited and see what happens. And I mean, there's going to be mistakes. There's always going to be mistakes in books. I don't know how many, traditionally published books that have been professionally edited and proofreaded have mistakes in them. I mean, I've found mistakes reading Harry Potter books. They're going to be there. There's, typos and little things that, happen. But it's, it's disruptive to the reading experience. But, if it isn't that frequent, you can move past it. But, I remember, oh God, this had to be like 10, 15 years ago now. I read a book by an author who at that time was, I think this was like their first book. They've since gone on to be like a best-selling big name author, okay? I'm not gonna call out names. I'm not gonna say the title of the book, anything like that. But this book was traditionally published, by a big publishing house. And I don't know what happened. I honestly don't know what happened. I don't know if like the proofreader went on strike. I don't know if the proofreader made changes and those changes didn't make it over to the final published document, because it was bad. Like, I mean, there were mistakes on every page. I mean, it was one of the worst proofread books I've ever read, but, as a traditional book. I mean, not that we expect that from self-publishing, but this read like something that somebody had self-published themselves and hadn't bothered to spend money on editorial services. I mean, it was pretty bad, and it definitely disrupted my reading experience. And I had high hopes for the book. Like, I wanted to like it, and I didn't really like it that much. And I don't know if that was like the story itself, which it might have been, or if it was just because I was so annoyed by all the mistakes on the book that it really colored my reading experience. I will say that I haven't read another book by this author. Like, I guess I was so turned off by that book that's like, I just haven't picked up another of this author's books. So it, from what I can see, has not hurt this author's career. But it did, they did lose a reader in me after that reading experience. So you probably don't want to turn away readers, especially if you're, at a stage in your career where you're still trying to, make a name for yourself. So yeah, just save up your money, definitely find, or barter with someone, do something to, find someone who can, professionally edit, proofread your book, because I think that will make a difference. And, a beautiful cover, a beautiful blurb, that will obviously draw readers to your book. They might buy it, you might make money from the sales, but you may not pick up lifetime readers if, they find themselves being really annoyed by the book, if they're so annoyed that they leave, low star reviews because, it was just, to them, not an enjoyable reading experience. But speaking of reviews, there was an interesting experience this week. So I had finished a book that I'd bought a little while back and enjoyed. And it's by an author whose books I've enjoyed before. In fact, this time I'll call out the author because I did like the book and I'm only going to say nice things about it. So her name is Emily Arsenault. I don't know how she pronounces it. It's Arsenault. And she writes what I would call subtle thrillers, quiet thrillers, sometimes have an element of like supernatural in them. So this particular book was called The Evening Spider, and it's set in it's set in New England, in a small New England town, Connecticut, I believe, and an older house. So it's a woman with, well, they're a couple, but it's from the perspective of the woman who has a new baby. She's in this house, and some spooky things maybe start happening. And this is, there's her story, and then there's the story of a woman who lived in the house 150 years previously, and who was also a mom with a new baby. And it goes back and forth between their two stories, which become intertwined at a certain point, and there's a little bit of a ghost element, but it's not like over the top or anything like that. It's very much a subtle kind of thing, and I felt the book was really skillfully done. I found it to be like a page turner. I really enjoyed it. I guess I am the target audience for it because I really like the book, and I thought it was well written. So when I do enjoy a book, I like to help an author out by, of course, leaving reviews on, different review sites. I mean, I love to review on Apple because that's where I bought it, and then I love to review on Amazon because that's where everyone buys books. So when I left my review, I wrote my review, and then I just wanted to notice because, it had 3.5 stars. It was, it had, I don't know how many reviews, maybe 40, 50 reviews. I could be wrong on that number. Might be less than that. But anyway, it was 3.5 stars. And I was like, well, this was definitely better than a 3.5 star book. So, what are people complaining about? And of course, there were, as averages go, there were obviously people who had left 5-star reviews, people left 4-star reviews, and there was a lot of people who left low star reviews and really did not like this book. And I was like, wow, I could understand it maybe not being your cup of tea, but why is somebody giving this book a 1-star review? It's definitely not, a 1-star book, but people are complaining that it was too confusing with, a character from the 1800s and a character in modern day. I don't know what they're even talking about. I didn't find it confusing at all, but, and I don't even think I'm that smart, but apparently for some people that was confusing to go back and forth between the different timelines. I think it was very clear when it was, when it was in the present day, when it was in historic timeline. I don't think there was really any confusion there. And what were other people complaining about? That was the major complaint, was that it was confusing with the history stuff, and, people just didn't know what was going on and everything, and just didn't really enjoy the book. And, I guess that's fine, to each their own. But something good to keep in mind, if you are a writer out there with a book out there and you get 1-star reviews of people complaining about it, obviously if that's all you're getting, that's probably not a good sign. But if you get those here and there, I wouldn't take it too personally, because I thought this book was great. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoy her other books. And so I was kind of really confused by all these people who really hated the book. They really did not like this book and thought it was awful and terrible, and so, if you get those reviews, don't worry too much, because there's probably people out there who really like the book, and you can't please everyone, right? So, just something to keep in mind. If you're struggling and getting a few bad reviews, don't get discouraged. Hey, that's their problem, right? But anyway, that's all that's really going on in my author life this week. Hasn't been, nothing earth-shattering or anything like that to report. I'm still trying to, I have the website up and running. It's not quite perfect at this point. What I found out actually was I used a whole template to build it. Okay, a template that's supposed to be optimized for mobile. Well, what I found is it's not optimized for iPhone. I thought, well, maybe it's just my iPhone, because I have the smallest one. I have an SE, which is the size of an iPhone 5, which I like because I can hold it in my hand. Apparently other people don't like holding their phones in their hands, because phones have gotten huge now, and I don't understand it. I can hold it in my hand, and I can fit it in pockets if I happen to be lucky enough to have clothing that has pockets, which women, we know there is a shortage of pockets in our clothing. But anyway, that's just me ranting about phone sizes. So I thought maybe it was just my small iPhone, but I have family members who have larger ones, and nope. So my website, at least pages on my website, are not displaying properly on iPhones at the moment. So if you were trying to navigate my site with an iPhone, I do apologize. I am working on a fix for it, and by working on a fix, I mean I've contacted the company that I bought the template from. Well, didn't really buy the template. I'm a subscriber to their service, and that's one of the things they offered. So, and they're a pretty major company, so I've contacted them to see if they have a fix for it. Otherwise, there's a couple of different ways that I can go about fixing it, and if it comes to that, I will have to do that and just figure out which strategy I'm going to use to fix it. So at the moment, my website is live. You can, use it. Functionality, it should work fine on desktop. I think it's going to work fine on Android phones. It works fine on my iPad. But if you're trying to view it on an iPhone, you're going to run into some problems on some of the pages. So my apologies about that, but I am aware of the issue, and I am going to figure out what solution I'm going to use to correct that. So it's never as simple as you think. Never. Anyway, that's all I got for you this week. But if you do want to check out my website, which is sort of functional, but not completely, depending on what device you're using, it is alyssagrasso.com. That's ALISSAGROSSO.com. And as always, thank you everyone for watching and listening. I put out new episodes of Awkward Author every week. It's available as a vlog on YouTube and as a podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Anyway, so I will catch up with you guys in another week. I hope you have a great week. Happy writing, happy reading. Enjoy the fall weather. And I'll talk to you all again soon.